Welcome, everyone. Did you know that Dr. Aribert Heim, notoriously known as Dr. Death, was never tried for his heinous crimes against humanity? This unsettling truth might come as a shock to many. The man behind some of the most horrifying medical experiments during World War II, Dr. Aribert Heim, managed to evade justice until his last breath. Born in Austria in the early 20th century, Heim joined the ranks of the Nazi Party as a doctor. His professional title, however, belies the gruesome reality of his role. Stationed at the Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp, Heim earned his chilling moniker Dr. Death for his unthinkable experiments on helpless prisoners. His discoveries, if we can call them that, are a dark stain on the annals of both science and medical ethics. Dr. Heim's name is often mentioned in the same breath as some of the most monstrous figures from the Nazi era. His experiments, devoid of any respect for human life, were a horrifying display of cruelty. From injecting substances into prisoners to study bone and muscle regeneration, to amputating healthy limbs and conducting grafts between different prisoners, his practices were nothing short of nightmarish. It's hard to fathom the depths of his disregard for humanity. His experiments were not limited to the physical body. He extracted large quantities of blood from prisoners, subjected them to incompatible blood transfusions, and even removed internal organs without anesthesia. The pain and suffering he inflicted are unimaginable. What's perhaps even more shocking is that despite committing such horrendous war crimes and crimes against humanity, Dr. Heim was never brought to justice. He managed to slip through the cracks of the post-war legal system, living out his days as a fugitive until his death in 1992. His contributions to science hold no value, marred as they are by the cruel and inhumane methods he employed. But who exactly was this man, and what were the nature of his experiments? Buckle up as we delve into the disturbing world of Dr. Aribert Heim. Our story begins in the early 1940s in the heart of World War II at the Mauthausen-Gusen concentration camp. A place where human rights were discarded, where the value of life was diminished, and where one man, Dr. Aribert Heim, sought to exploit the suffering for his own perverse interests. Heim, known as Dr. Death, embarked on a series of inhumane experiments, his subjects, the helpless prisoners of the camp. His early work centered around a ghastly fascination with bones and muscles. He was intrigued by how these structures regenerated and healed themselves. And so, the nightmare began. Heim would inject various substances into prisoners, observing their agony, their struggle, their resilience. He aimed to understand the process of bone and muscle regeneration, but his methods were anything but ethical, anything but humane. Healthy limbs were amputated, not for any medical necessity, but purely to satisfy Heim's morbid curiosity. He watched as the human body in its desperate struggle for survival worked to heal the traumatic injuries inflicted upon it. Heim's actions were not those of a healer, but those of a torturer. He didn't stop at amputations. Heim performed bone and muscle grafts between different prisoners. Imagine the horror of having a piece of someone else's body forced into your own. This was not science. This was a perversion of medical practice, a gross violation of the Hippocratic Oath. Each day under Heim's reign was a new chapter in a living nightmare for the prisoners. Each experiment, a new level of horror. But this was only the beginning. Heim's fascination with the human body was not satiated with bones and muscles. His curiosity demanded more. It demanded a deeper understanding, a more intimate exploration. But his curiosity didn't stop there. His fascination with the human body led him to explore even more horrifying practices. Practices that would further cement his legacy as one of the most gruesome figures of World War II. But that, dear listeners, is a story for another time. As if his initial experiments weren't horrifying enough, Heim took his research to an even more gruesome level. In his relentless pursuit of knowledge, Dr. Aribert Heim showed no regard for human life, conducting a series of blood and organ experiments that defy the most basic principles of medical ethics. Blood became a focal point of Heim's research. He extracted large amounts of blood from his prisoners, often to the point of causing anemia or even death. He then studied this blood in detail, trying to unlock the secrets of human biology. But his experiments didn't stop there. In a terrifying display of disregard for human life, Heim would inject prisoners with incompatible blood types, watching as their bodies reacted to the foreign substance. These transfusions were not only painful but often led to fatal complications. Heim's fascination with the human body extended beyond blood. He conducted a series of organ experiments that are as shocking as they are inhumane. Heim would remove organs from prisoners without a hint of anesthesia, causing unbearable pain and suffering. He would then study these organs, attempting to understand their function and structure. But even this was not enough for Heim. In some instances, he would transplant organs from one prisoner to another, a procedure that was not only incredibly risky, but also served no practical purpose. These experiments were not grounded in scientific curiosity, but rather in a sadistic desire to inflict pain and suffering. Heim's methods were not only cruel, but also devoid of any scientific merit. His so-called discoveries were based on flawed methodologies and unethical practices, rendering them useless in the scientific community. The depth of Heim's inhumanity was boundless. But what became of him and his so-called discoveries? As we delve deeper into the dark history of Dr. Aribert Heim, we must remember that his actions were not just a perversion of science, but a gross violation of human rights. His legacy serves as a stark reminder of the horrors that can occur when ethics and humanity are disregarded in the pursuit of knowledge. Despite the horrifying nature of his experiments, Heim was never brought to justice. The aftermath of Dr. Aribert Heim's experiments is a dark chapter in the annals of human history, leaving a legacy of terror, pain, and a disturbing disregard for the sanctity of life. Heim's gruesome experiments, conducted under the guise of advancing medical knowledge, were devoid of any true scientific value. The methodology he employed, characterized by extreme cruelty and a complete lack of ethical consideration, invalidates any potential findings that could have arisen from his work. His discoveries were the product of torture and inhumanity, and as such, they have no place in the realm of science or medicine. The aftermath of Heim's reign of terror was equally unsettling. Despite the monstrous nature of his crimes, Heim managed to evade justice. He slipped through the fingers of the law, disappearing into the shadows of post-war Europe. He lived out his days as a fugitive, never facing the justice he so rightfully deserved. In 1992, Dr. Aribert Heim, the man known as Dr. Death, died in obscurity, leaving behind a legacy of horror that still haunts the corridors of Mauthausen-Gusen. In the years following his death, the world has struggled to come to terms with the extent of Heim's crimes. His actions serve as a stark reminder of the depths humanity can sink to when ethics and morality are cast aside. They underscore the importance of ethical guidelines in scientific research, highlighting the dire consequences that can occur when these boundaries are crossed. Heim's story is a chilling reminder of the atrocities committed in the name of science. His legacy is a dark stain on the tapestry of medical history, a grim testament to the destructive power of unbridled hubris. It serves as a warning to future generations, a call to uphold the sanctity of life and to adhere to the principles of ethical conduct in all endeavors, scientific or otherwise. The legacy of Dr. Heim is a stark reminder of the importance of medical ethics and human dignity. As we reflect on the story of Dr. Aribert Heim, known as Dr. Death, we are confronted with the chilling reality of one man's disregard for human life in the pursuit of science. His story stands as a stark reminder of the atrocities committed during the Holocaust, a dark period in history that we must never forget. His discoveries, if they can even be called that, were born out of an utter lack of respect for human dignity and a blatant violation of medical ethics. While science seeks to understand and improve the human condition, Heim's experiments only sought to destroy. His actions were not only a desecration of his oath as a doctor, but also a gross violation of human rights. But why is it so vital to remember these atrocities? It's because, by remembering, we reaffirm our commitment to fighting against intolerance and discrimination in all its forms. We remind ourselves of the importance of upholding human dignity and the sanctity of life. We remember so that we can learn, grow, and ensure that such horrors never happen again. The significance of medical ethics cannot be overstated. It is the cornerstone of the medical profession. guiding doctors to provide care that respects each patient's dignity and rights. It's a commitment to do no harm and to prioritize the well-being of patients above all else. Heim's heinous crimes underscore the importance of adhering to these principles, as the consequences of their violation are simply too grave to bear. While this video is but a brief introduction to Dr. Heim and his crimes, we hope it serves as a stark reminder of the importance of ethics in research and the value of human life. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, knowledge is power.